I myself refer to myself as a Chicana because
Me too, Denise. Can I say?
am a Chicana. I grew up in the 60s. When you say you're a Chicana, you take on a political and a social consciousness. That's the difference.
And
Political and a social consciousness.
I agree, and I still call, and I think in some of my social media like handles and things, it still
I'm a
says
Chicana.
Chicana. But so the awards that we started, the Latinas,
Yes.
we had spoken
Is it
to
Latina or Latin?
Well,
Latinx,
Latinas.
well, there's Gen Mex, there's everything.
Yeah, and so
whatever you
we
want
had
to call
spoke to
yourself.
some young people in MSU, and I agree with them. Latinx is very whitewashed.
Yes, well.
Latin, and then the X at the
Yeah.
end, Latinx. It's
Yes,
very whitewashed,
yes.
and so they don't like calling themselves
Yes.
Latinx, but they also want to be gender neutral. So they didn't want to be Latino or Latina, and so a lot of them are using Latine.
Latina.
Yeah.
Well, I've seen that come up. Now, my brother-in-law is in his 90s. He's African American, but he grew up in a time when he was Negro. Negro, do you call yourself black, African American? I think people should feel comfortable with what they want to call themselves, but I myself am a Chicana because I'm a child of the 60s, an activist. I know that Rodolfo Anaya, whose anniversary we're celebrating, he was definitely a Chicano. In his book, A Chicano in China, is a masterpiece when he went to China and reflected on being a Chicano in China. Imagine that. It's beautiful. And so I know that a lot of people don't like Hispanic. I don't like the term Hispanic. It's a clumping by Washington, D.C. I don't use Hispanic. Hispano is a different thing because we're Hispanohablantes. We speak Spanish. We're Latin countries. But I know that a lot of writers, for example, Sandra Cisneros, would never turn up at an event that was Hispanic. Maybe she does now that she's famous and lives in San Miguel de Allende. But a lot of people eschew that term. I feel comfortable with Mexican American, Latina, whatever, but Chicana is my preferred term because I'm an activist, and it is Mesquite. It's not mesquite to me. I'm sorry. Come on, ladies, let's get with it.
Okay, Mesquite.
And it's keep those accents going. I think it's very important to keep your accent. We had a family reunion, and I talked to one of my cousins. I said, You don't have the accent on Chavez. She said, we don't use it anymore. I said, you don't use it anymore. My mother was a Spanish teacher. If you don't use it anymore, you're negating that accent of who you are and where you come from. But then some people feel removed from that. Barry Lopez, the writer, Lopez should have an accent on the O, but he was his stepfather. And I said, Barry, do you use an accent on your O? No.
Our clerk,
Amanda does, yeah.
Amanda is adamant about it.
Right.
Yes.
Our clerk, Dr. Amanda Lopez Askins,
Yes.
she's like, you forgot the accent. She'll tell us, oh, can you edit that? You forgot the accent.
Yeah.
Yes, you have to have that accent and then people always say Chavez.
Chavez, yeah.
Our family was part of the Chavez Ravine people in California, but people say Chavez. But then if you say Cha-cha, right? I always say cha-cha. If you remember that it has the A, Chavez. It's not Chavez or Chavez. Although, in my travels around the world, I was a fellow at the National Endowment for the Arts one summer. Thank you, New Mexico Arts Division. And I was there in the literature department of the NEA. And there was an African American, Chavez, Chavis, and he always called me Prima, because I've also met Shabes from Mexico, Chavez. It's derivations of Chavez, Chavez, SHACH, and it goes on and on. So the names are out there. And as I was speaking earlier, EZ denotes probably a Sephardic Jewish element too. And so, yes, we are Sepharditas, we're indigenous. The Piro Manso tribe is my tribe too. And also we have Apache blood, Lipa de Apache. So we're really that mestizaje, aren't we,
Yes.
Caroline?
Absolutely. I know I have Apache blood in me.
Yes,
nice.
you do.
That's cool.
Absolutely. We're Apaches.
I remember my parents used to get mad at me because I used to pronounce my name Mendoza. I did
Oh
reporting.
my God, girl.
And then
On the radio, I remember hearing you say your name,
I would
Mendoza.
say Mendoza, and my parents
Oh,
would get so
no.
mad at me. So now I say Mendoza, but I
Please.
try to, but it's hard, you know. And I think
No.
we just gotta. That's
You know,
how we
I have
appreciate
a
our
smudge
culture.
stick. I'll pray over you.
I love
Listen,
it.
I have the smudge stick. I have prayed over
Yeah.
people here. There was a
You can pray
woman
for me.
from the English. Well, she invited me to talk to a women's group at NMSU, but she says, "Do I have to come over to this neighborhood? I'm afraid." And I said, "You're afraid of the Mesquite area?" Yes, she was. And I said, "You want me to come and talk to your group? You have to come over here." And not only that, but I gave her a good talking to. I brought out the smudge stick, and something jumped out of her. Algo
Yeah.
salió.
Yeah.
Because she was afraid of this neighborhood, afraid of the people, and afraid
What
of,
was she afraid of?
Yeah.
I don't know,
I don't know. Yeah.
low class, poverty stricken. You go around the corner, you see a wall that says broken. I took a picture of that and put it online. Next to it is, you see a lot of, there's poverty here. There's unhoused people. We're suffering, folks. I live close to the Gospel Rescue Mission. I'm on that road that has a lot of people that are traveling from St. Luke's and everything. We need to do something about that. We really need to send out
housing.
those social workers to the people that are out there. All you have to do is go to PetSmart, where I get cat food for all my feral colonies, and there's people out there with unhoused people. I always carry pet food. I might see Bobby over there at the post office. Bobby has a little puppy, and I give him cat food, but it don't matter. I have a bag of Sister Beth is one of my neighbors over there, and so she's always giving me dog food and cat food. I have a trunk full of animal food. I shouldn't say that, but I'm ready to serve because we have a need in this community. Anyway, there we go.
Yeah.
Well, I saved the very best for last.
Did you?
I did. You call yourself a Chicana
Yes.
because you said
It
that
has
you're
a
from the
political-
60s.
Political and social consciousness. El movimiento y si se puede. Cesar Chavez. Yes.
Okay. Well, I found an article from, I forgot to date it. But it's here in Las Cruces about a performance that you were in of Beauty and the Beast.
Yes.
And I found this, and the resemblance is uncanny. You have the same eyes today as you had then.
Gosh, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm next to Irene Oliver Lewis. We played twins in Beauty and the Beast, and I went to Madonna High School, and when I was a senior, I won an award to study drama through Herschel Zone. And it was a $200 scholarship, but it paid for my semester, and I got a scholarship. And it was a wonderful training to be in teatro. All my writing is very theatrical. In my new book, it doesn't have quotations or voices. I've always been theater and voice driven. So I studied through Herschel Zone. Recently we had the death of James Earl Jones.
Yes.
Herschel Zone, whose theater was destroyed for Domenici. I'm sorry. That was a grave mistake to have destroyed the Herschel Zone Theater for Domenici building. I wept. But here's the thing. Herschel Zone was a Russian director that came to teach here at NMSU. He brought James Earl Jones, and he performed Othello. It was incredible. He would bring people he was a Yiddish director from the Ukraine, from Russia, and he would do plays, War and Peace. He played Tevye and Fiddler on the Roof, and he was my professor. So I won a scholarship from Madonna High School, and he called me up that summer. It was the summer of '66. Thank you so much for this. I'll share it with Irene, my prima. And he was doing Uncle Vanya, played by Chekhov. And he said, I want you to be in this play. I had just graduated from high school. and I was cast by Herschel Zone in a Chekhov play, and that was the beginning of really my theatrical career. Because we did Uncle Vanya, Cherry Orchard, and it was my great honor to have served with Herschel Zone in that beautiful theater. So I say that informed me. I later on went to the Dallas Theater Center, got a MFA in theater with Paul Baker, the great American director, and I'm a theater person. I have an MFA
Earlier we were talking about, and I asked you,
in theater.
I know of 14 plays that you've written, but you're saying it's closer to 40.
Oh, yes. And I
And you've
have...
done them in English, también español.
Oh, yes. El más pequeño de mis hijos. I've recently done my resume. Somebody asked me for my resume. Oh, God, it was like I haven't worked on this for 20 years, so I'm trying to figure out dates, and sometimes they mesh, and sometimes they don't. And I ran an older resume that listed a lot of plays, but it hadn't listed the plays that I did for Father Tickle, Guadalupe ×3, and Francis. I've written a lot of plays that have not been produced. I'm like... a lot of writers that have boxes. Thomas Wolfe had boxes. He was so prolific. I have boxes of unpublished children's plays, manuscripts, novels, poetry collections. Well, what can I say? I hope to get them out there, and I really, really need to. But yes, I've written a lot of plays, and one that I would like to produce is, that New Mexico has a lot of incidences still of bubonic plague. We have that, and I was always interested in the plague, knowing that we had that, and have studied a lot and researched the bubonic plague in Europe and everything. And so I wrote a play called Plague Time, and I did a lot of research, and the first version of the play is very heavy on the research, but it's set in a contemporary time. We're in a plague time right now. It could be set right now, too. And so it's heavy on the research and the information. And then I decided to abandon that version, and I rewrote it. And I would like to see those two plays done alternating nights. One night, the original, the second night, the other version, because they're so contemporary, the characters. People that were lepers were immune to plague because they had leprosy.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
There were a lot of interesting details that I learned about life, about people. In a way, going through pandemic was a educational period for a lot of people. When we had our family reunion, my husband has had some health issues, and we didn't attend the family reunion twice. Every time they had a Chavez reunion, everybody got COVID again.
Oh.
And people are flying in. So we're in a plague time too. And it's not only the animals. You see the rise of animal abuse now.
I know.
The missing children. You're seeing a lot of unhoused people. We're in a plague time, and it's a blood time too. And so the plays would be interesting. I have written so many plays, and so I've been revising my resume. Oh my God, I forgot about that. And after you forget the times I've forgotten. I was an actor too, and I performed at the penitentiary, how Johnny got thrown in the joint. And it was 2-character play, and we did it at the penitentiary in the yard just before
Here in
the
Latina
massacre.
or?
No, in Santa Fe, the
big one, the
the
federal.
big pen, and we performed in the yard just before the big massacre,
Before the riots.
just before the riots.
So
And
if you, I have to plug a book. It's called The Devil's Butcher Shop.
yes, it
And
was.
it's so detailed about the riots that happened in Santa Fe. I mean, to the point
I
where
need to see. Is it a book?
it's a book, and I mean, there are parts
Share
of the
it with
book where
me.
I'm like gagging.
Yes.
It's so
And many
yeah.
people, I need to read that book because there were people from Las Cruces that were murdered. I have written, the next book I really want to get out is called City of Crosses. And it's about unhoused people here in the borderland region. There is a guy that lives with his 3 dogs in a storage unit here.
Oh, wow.
It's set in Las Cruces, City of Crosses. They're unhoused people. And he was there, this character, in my novel, which is fiction. He lives in this storage unit with his dogs, Shinda and Shanda. And he's a survivor. And I even name all those people. It's horrific to see the names of those people, to know that they were Hispanos here from Las Cruces and from wherever in New Mexico. It was a horrific thing. Well, how Johnny got thrown in the joint was performed there, and we performed it out in the yard between. And the women were there at that point too. The women on one side and the men were on side, and we're in the middle yard performing. I also worked with the substance abuse theater company, Theater in the Red. I worked with them, and I did a lot of clown work, and that's when I was splayed on the rotunda floor. But we did a lot of New Mexico Free Theater I worked with too, and we did a lot of work with alcohol and a lot of sniffing bags, and so we would tour around New Mexico with glue, sniffing, and alcohol. And so I've done a lot of work in the trenches, and I really attribute a lot of my writing really to those years of theater. I think it's very important, whether it was the theater teachers at Madonna High School, Michael Coquad, or Mr. Dr. over here at NMSU, Herschel Zone, or whatever, Paul Baker. I had great teachers. I studied with Megan Terry, Viet Rock. She was big in the Vietnam era. And I was in a play called Brazil Fado. We trained for 6 months physically because it was a play about physical torture in Brazil. And it was, imagine, the play was so intense that we had to prepare. It was like really, really intense. And Megan Terry, who's now passed on, the Omaha Magic Theater, all of her plays are musicals. So I did a song. I don't sing, but I can sing. And I say that my characters sing. And I did a song dressed as Carmen de Miranda with a headdress with all the fruit and everything about political prisoners in Brazil. And the play was called Brazil Fado. Fado is a kind of song. So I've studied with some incredible teachers. I shared an office with Edward Albee at the University of Houston, another great actor. He was a great actor, although he was a great playwright. And I brought Edward Albee to NMSU after I knew him in Houston, and he talked at NMSU at a great reduction of his, and we had a party for Edward came down, and he says, well, what do you want me to do? I said, I want you to read. He was a great actor, and he read from his plays at NMSU, Edward Albee. I don't want you to talk about your plays. I want you to be the actor and to read from Virginia Woolf.
I have a request then. Your latest book I read and loved, and I would
Tell us what you thought about that book, Bern. Tell us from your perspective.
So from my perspective, again, I saw the parallel between the Mexican and the Irish. It just smacks me in the face every time. It's amazing. But what I took from that book are the images that you create with words that are unforgettable. I can still taste the dust in my mouth from when I read that. I can't explain anything other than I know there's dust in my mouth, because I read it and felt it and tasted it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It was very powerful. So I would love if you took a moment to read a little bit from your
I will.
Your latest book?
This is Street of Too Many Stories. I wrote it during NaNoWriMo. I've done that 6 times.
NaNoWriMo.
National Write a Novel in 1 month. You start November the 1st. You end on the 30th. They suggest 3,500 words a day.
Let's do it,
And you
Bern.
end up with 50,000 words. I've done it 6 times. And once I went to Mexico, Mexico City, and I wrote it in 3 weeks because I lost a week in Mexico. But this was written in 2017, and it really was condensed. It took me 7 years to really get it in this shape, but Face of an Angel I wrote in 7 years too, and it's started off with 1,200 pages, 800, 600, it's now 300, my other novel. But I'm going to read about Encantada, New Mexico, Encantada Street residents. It's a story about families, it's a story about healing and forgiveness, but I'll just read a little bit about the street. The street is a character, and I'll just read a little page or so. The symbol of rain is there, which means so much to us. The street remembered everything. Once there was no street, only cotton fields. And before that, empty land with tall grass, the height of a man's waist. Once the Rio Grande ran through what was later to become the street and overfilled its banks. There were floods and new arroyos formed. There were years of drought. Animals died without water, and men and women found no shade. Brother killed brother, and women bore children that were stillborn. Hermanos indígenas were butchered by those who would colonize them. A wind blew through the road. Settlers came through here from Mexico looking for gold, a new life. El Camino Real de la Tierra Adentro it was called, the royal road to the interior land. The road became a road of suffering and death. It was called La Jornada del Muerto. The vultures came and ate the carrion. The ancestors flew through the air in the form of crows, and sometimes the sky was dark with the beating of their wings. Sunrises were blindingly beautiful, and the sunsets brought tears to a man's eyes. The land was ancient, undiscovered by anyone except the life that inhabited it, animals giant and frightening. And now the street was inhabited by a few families, all of them like the crows, flapping, cackling, crying. It was a small street. Their lives seemed insignificant, and yet their dreams were immense and filled the darkening sky. And when the night came, the great unrest grew. The street remembered everything. A large remolino came from nowhere and enveloped everything with this blinding, swirling dust. And just as quickly a gentle breeze blew through there and cooled the air. A soft rain followed and washed everything clean. The footsteps, the prints of animals, large and small. Night came, and the creatures rested. The street remembered that it was more than a street. The street remembered the low, guttural, and sensual late-night laughter of men and the soft, warm bodies of the women they embraced. The howl of small children who hadn't gotten their way. The cats that shrieked in the middle of too many nights in heat, and the final gasp of the dying. The street remembered those who crossed over and came back again, and why. It remembered that waist-high water at 3 a.m. in the morning that one year, the freeze that brought anxiety to those who loved the feral animals. It remembered those who left early in the morning in ambulances, never to return. The street remembered the prayers, the petitions to God. Por favor, no me toques, mi hija, hijita, no me dejes morir, por favor, don't let them take me away. Don't let me die. Por favor. Por favor. Don't let me die. And yes, it remembered the brutal gunshot. Ese balazo that took that life and wasted hope, corrupted love. It remembered the blood, the excrement, the joyful twisted sheets full of semen, and the home births of those blessed enough to be born in the brace of family. The memory of it all was the street's essence. Who remembers now? La calle, the street.
Wow.
So powerful. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Man.
Buy the book,
No,
folks.
I'm going to. I'm
Yeah,
going
I'm
to.
gonna
I'm
have to.
leaving with a few books
Yeah.
today. So I'm going to put a shameless plug for your amazing bookstore here. If you ever want to stop by, if Frida Kahlo, if she's out, that means Denise is in. So drive by, and if you see Frida out by the front door, that means Denise is here. And so a shameless plug for this amazing bookstore. You have books. I was just looking on your table over here. I believe you have War and Peace written in Spanish. I think Lolita
Yes.
written in Spanish is over here.
Portnoy's Complaint. Now, you very rarely find it in Spanish. These
Yeah.
books were donated by somebody from Mexico City. But listen to this. It was Portnoy's Complaint in English, but in Spanish, it's El Lamento
Really?
de Portnoy. And it's even more painful in Spanish. It's not a complaint, it's a lament.
Yes.
So if you need Portnoy's Complaint in Spanish, we got it.
You have some amazing books, beautiful works here. I mean, you have albums, you have we talked about from the golden era of Mexican cinema.
Yes,
You
the
have beautiful.
golden age.
You have beautiful lobby cards. Gotta buy more.
They're in the back.
Yeah, you have beautiful, amazing books here. So if you ever want to stop by, it's a beautiful bookstore.
By appointment, too.
Yeah. Also, yeah, you
Yes.
can always contact Denise.
Yes,
Reach out
contact
to you on
me.
Facebook.
You have people from out of town. Yesterday, I was here all day long with a writer from Albuquerque who has a home in Spain, and she's written about her little village in Spain. And I have a copy of Martha Hurd, and my friend Valentin came with some fig chutney that I just have been saving myself for. So yes, make an appointment. But I'm generally here. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday from 11 to 5.
11 to 5, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Usually, unless she's
Usually.
Yep.
And don't come late because I
Don't
have
come at 4:45.
Don't come then because I have to feed my feral cats. I'm a cat lady. And I have things to do. Don't come early and don't come late.
You want to sleep in a little bit.
Yes,
Yeah.
I do because I have an elderly cat that had a stroke.
Aw.
And so I'm following her around with wee pads all over the place.
Aw.
Little Miko. She's in and out. She's doing okay, but just like an elder with a diaper, I'm following this little kitty around. So not too early, not too
Yeah.
late.
Got it.
Sounds good.
You could always reach out to Denise on Facebook.
Yes,
You
very
have-
active.
Yeah, you have your personal Facebook. I know you're active on. You're also active on your Casa Camino Real
Yes,
Facebook,
I
so
need
you
to
can reach
get
out
that.
there.
Yes.
Where
we
do you
got-
sell your books online?
We have a platform on Books, an international platform, and thank God for that, those sales online, because during the pandemic it was hard. Although we gave a lot of books away, we had 2 drive-by book distributions. We gave away 600 children's books one year of the pandemic. The next year we gave thousands and thousands drive-by to adults. Books, look for Casa Camino Real. I need to call a gentleman, Mohammed, who just ordered a book from Saudi Arabia,
Wow.
Animals of Saudi Arabia. We have all kinds of collections, nature, environmental, that signed book by John Nichols, who passed away. We have books that you're not going to find in the Game Birds of India, which is a beautiful book from the 1800s with incredible artwork. We have Chicano, Latino, Southwestern, bilingual books. Las Cruces, you better come soon because I'm not going to be here for always. And I need to move on to my project Museo de la Gente, so I consider maybe being here another year or so. But we will donate books. We give a lot of books away. I am having a shipment of 18 boxes coming in. Now, for example, the Art of Florence, the Louvre, the Art and Spirit of Paris, we will have book sales half price. Often have the art books at half price, Southwestern books half price. We have a lot of sales. So teachers out there and people that really want books, please come. I've sold the first edition of L. Ron Hubbard's book. I have a lot of books by Asimov. We have science fiction. We've got everything. Latin America.
I'm looking at the Bhagavad Gita.
Metaphysical collection. Who Invented the Moon? I sold that book. But Pyramid Power, we've got collections. We also have erotica online, the Golden Age of Spain, marble paper books, science and
I'm
geology
looking
books
at the
online.
Dune books right
Yes,
here.
we've got them.
Uh-huh.
We've got a lot of different books, and just come on over. I have somebody prepared to spend at least 2 hours here, having coffee, but never put it down on a book. Keep the liquid away from the books, and then look around. You're sitting in front of the scary bookshelf. That's the marbled paper books, 1800. Early 1900s. There's a set of El Teatro de Cervantes, 7-volume set, and a beautiful marble paper, El Teatro de Cervantes. We've got a lot of Cervantino books donated by so many people all over across the world. When my visitors were here, was it yesterday or Tuesday? What's today? They were here on Tuesday. What's
It's
today?
Wednesday. Yep.
Well, they were here
Yesterday.
yesterday,
Okay.
and they brought a lot of beautiful books. Helen Hardin, Native American books. I've sold signed books of Maria Martinez. You name it. I always say que este es el templo y los libros son sagrados.
Yes.
This is the temple, and books are sacred.
You know what? I really think that is a I don't want to say it's uniquely American, but it's a very American, or maybe it's just the way I grew up. But I can't throw away books. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it
I
feels
can't.
weird.
I cannot throw. I can throw anything else away, but I cannot throw away a book, because books they're like you said, sagrado. They're sacred.
They're sacred.
Uh-huh.
They have an essence. They have a presence. They're alive. Pass it on. Even if the book isn't kind of battered, don't underline your books. Libraries do terrible things to book. If you want to underline and write in, okay, that's great. Keep it. But we give a lot of books in a program we call Libros para el Viaje. We've donated 40,000 books to refugees, migrants. We have a little bookshelf at the Veterans Combat Shelter with everything that's happening in the world. I've given away all my war books. I don't need the battlegrounds of the Civil War or that book on Churchill, and it was a beautiful book. I had a book that wasn't moving, the history of the Marine Corps. I don't particularly need that book, so I donated it to the Veterans Center, and they were very happy to get that. We give away books for El Caldito, and we're going back for a gratitude giveaway. Always need volunteers. We'll be there just before Christmas with stuffed toys from PetSmart. They donated, and somewhere I have some stuffed toys. I have stuffed toys all over the place. Well, we gave away stuffed toys, and there was a woman who had not had a stuffed animal in years, and so she got a book, and she got one of these stuffed animals, and she was wearing this beaded spangly thing that was crocheted. I hadn't seen a hat like that since 1950 that someone might have had in the future, in the past, but not in this future. Anyway, she was hugging her stuffed animal in her books. So we need volunteers all the time. I'm getting these 18 boxes of books that are coming in this weekend, and I need help sorting. We need to figure out, are we going to take it to the nursing home? Are we going to go here? Where do the books go? I think that's the thing. Cada libro con su persona y su lugar. Every book with its person and its place. Don't give them away. And if they are maltratados and battered, give them to Savers, because Savers recycles those books, and they're giving them to the children. You know, what is the after-school program? What do you call it?
Oh, there's Enrich the Kids. There's
Yes,
the
right.
Boys and Girls Club.
Oh, they do a lot of work with the boys and girls. You don't want to see books in bins, garbage. No, you don't want to. Give the books,
You know
battered books,
what?
to Savers.
You know, when I was in college, I worked for Enrich the Kids.
Okay.
I was the kinder queen. I worked with all the kindergartners. And there was this little girl, and I mean, she was reading a book a day. And I would ask her parents, how often are you guys going to the bookstore? And he was like, we go every weekend, because I got to buy her
Aw, how
10
wonderful.
books every week.
It's so beautiful. My
Yes.
daughter reads a lot too. She loves her chapter books, and
You need
she's
to
very
bring her.
smart.
Look at that
Yeah.
bookshelf
I'm
with
gonna have
kids'
to bring her
books.
because she loves to read, and I think that's such a beautiful
Yes,
feature
bring
to
her
having
over.
kids. Yeah.
Bring her over. We get many, many
I will.
donations, and we are blessed because we have donations. Plow Publishing from New York gives me so many beautiful donations. I have a beautiful book in Spanish on Archbishop Saint Romero, La Violencia del Amor. He wrote that that's the title of the book, the only violence that should exist is the violence of love. He was assassinated while giving Mass in El Salvador in 1980. It's a beautiful book, and I have a bookshelf there. I have the ability, through blessing, to be able to give as much away as I can. And I never hold myself back. Daniel Chacon was here to do a podcast a week ago, Words on a Wire. He's the director now of the creative writing program at UTEP. He would be a good person. Well, they were here and they filmed, and Daniel found a book on drunks, the history of drunks. And he's doing some research on alcoholism and the history of drunks. And I gave it to him because he needed that book on the history of drunks. And then I ran across another book, Drinking with Men. And it's about a former bartender woman and what her experiences in learning about life by pouring drinks for people. So if Cassie McClure would ever make it over here, I know she's totally prolific in German. She speaks German. Her family is German. I have some books in German. She hasn't come by. And I've been saving a beautiful book in German for her. In the Scary Bookshelf, I have the most beautiful Bible in German.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
So we have books in French, Spanish, English. The books that I mostly give to immigrants and refugees and migrants and asylum seekers are Spanish, English, bilingual, French, Portuguese. We've gotten books from Pema Chodron, the Buddhist nun, who gave us a lot of books in Portuguese and French and English. So donations are out there. It's just a matter of knowing where to send books. Recently, I spoke to somebody from the American Booksellers Association. We're a member, and they have a program that aligns community people and organizations that need books. And I signed up to get a line to bookstores that give free books. And after talking to the woman, she wanted me to connect with a bookstore in Austin. I said, Austin, are you kidding me? We're on the Mexican border close to El Paso and Ciudad Juarez. And after talking to her, I wasn't a person to receive. I was to become the head donor of the thing. So in other words, people come here, I need a warehouse. I need a warehouse that somebody can donate here in Las Cruces where we can distribute books, climate controlled for at least a year or two. We don't have the money for very much rent or no rent, but I need a building so we can distribute for people, because now we're going to be getting books from the American Booksellers Association from all over the country. And so I need books. I have houses. I have a house full of books and art. And part of this is going into Museo de la Gente. I've run out of room, folks. I'm like Picasso that just had houses of, what do we call them, chucherias?
Yeah.
Tchotchkes. Cositas. You know, what can chingaderas, let's call them chingaderas, whatever they are. I have things. And so I need space. I'm always looking for space.
So that's a plug for Denise. If you're out there and you're listening and you know of a location here in Las Cruces, come and talk to Denise because she needs some help, at least for a couple of years, so you can
distribute free books to our community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can think of like so many communities, small communities throughout southern New Mexico that I'm sure would love to.
We have so many empty spaces.
Yeah.
We were a nonprofit with the Border Book Festival, and we're entering another nonprofit phase through Museo de la Gente. I'm working on that. As soon as I do a couple of jobs here and get a little money forward, it's $821 to become a nonprofit. I just haven't had that money, but we are moving toward that goal again. So if somebody can help us out with a space to distribute, to maybe have workshops, have volunteers. And what's the future, ladies and gentlemen? Interns. I'd like to have an internship program to teach young people how to take care of books, how to take care of artworks, how do you take care of photographs, how do you preserve an old letter from your grandmother? How do you collect the recipes of your abuelita? When I do a lot of family writing workshops, I work with a lot of recipes. For several years, I had a grant from, who was it from? The Rockefeller Foundation, and I was teaching classes at the Munson Center for 3 years. It was called the Divine Frontier Writing Workshop. And we did up recipes toward the end of one of our sessions. And one of the elder writers over there at Munson had a recipe for potato peel soup. It was a potato peel soup. It's hard to say that fast. Potato peel soup, because his father was in Auschwitz and was a cook. And so they would make soup out of potato peels. And so all my elders, we had all the gathering of all these recipes. And so we had your mother's red enchiladas, the bizcochos from here, and then we had the potato soup. And so all of us brought what our family recipe was. It was a beautiful workshop for 3 years at the Munson, and I really enjoyed that. Our first meeting, for those that were interested, was over there we met at La Nueva Casita. And I like to work at restaurants. I like to have readings in the community. And somebody asked me, said, why are you still here in Las Cruces? Because this is my home. I would never think of leaving to Mexico. I love Mexico. I love to visit it. It's la tierra natal for many of us. It's our native country. I want to go to Ireland. Never been there. No, it's my native country. But this is my home. And I have to stay here. Somebody needs to be writing the stories. We had Gloria Ansaldúa, the great Chicana writer that wrote about the border. What women and what men are writing about the U.S. border right now? Can you name 5 on one hand?
I can't.
Sandra Cisneros is from Chicago. We have a lot of people. Ana Castillo was born in Chicago, the battling doñas.
I know. Well, Jennifer's sometimes writing about here in Doñana, but La Jennifer Cervantes is from
yes,
San Diego.
I know. But we're talking about nitty-gritty in the trenches, writing about what's happening on the U.S.-Mexico border.
I have a plug for Dr. Bejarano at MSU. Her book's coming out. I'm going to her book release in a couple weeks.
There you go. But we need to have, and I was talking about not having a history books about Las Cruces. Most of the books that have been written are by our Anglo writers. And so we do have a writer, Robert C. Medina, and very few people know about him. And I want to tout him and praise him. He worked at White Sands. He was a camera tracker. And he should have gone to engineering school. And every time they would bring in people, he would teach them how to do it. The early days of White Sands, the very early days. He has a book called Two Ranges. He was our first Chicano writer in Las Cruces. And so they would hire people as his boss, but he never got to be the boss. He was constantly put down. And this was our people too. He never rose very high because even though he taught the people that became his bosses camera tracking. And Two Ranges, it has 2 different covers. One of them is it has on the front cover minority displacement, or more about, it's about minority displacement, but the second edition doesn't have that. Somebody must have come after him or something. But he suffered. And last year I was Hispano Heritage Month. They invited me to White Sands. I haven't been on a military base in a long time, and they were very gracious. The food was wonderful. The fideos were fantastic.
Ooh.
The vermicelli was, oh my God, who's this cook? Well, I said, I don't want to talk about generals. I want to talk about Robert C. Medina, first Chicano in Las Cruces. I want to talk about my mother who taught at Conley in those fields of dirt, a single parent. My father sending a $25 check every now and then in the 60s. I want to talk about her coming home and eating cold corn or cold peas for lunch and see if there was an alimony check. And then I want to talk about her selling encyclopedias in the afternoon and leaving us at the Brannigan Library and then going to White Sands to teach Spanish in the evening. I want to talk about my uncle, Frank Lujan, who was a mechanic. Don't talk to me about generals. I want to talk about the people that really built White Sands, the workers. And so Robert C. Medina, remember that name. He was our
Robert C.
first
Medina.
Chicano writer, and you ought to talk to his family because his son is a playwright. He went to the Iowa school.
Okay.
Carol
Interesting.
Medina. Yes,
Okay.
Robert C. Medina.
Okay, we'll try to see what we can find on them. You know, one of the things that we're working on that we've talked to a few. One in particular, his name is Troy Ainsworth, and he's a historian at Fort Bliss.
Yes, I know Troy.
Troy, yeah.
Yes.
We're possibly going to do a podcast series with him, and mostly on the history of Doña Ana County, because, like you said, we don't have enough people writing
don't.
about our frontera here, and so we're gonna see what we can do after the election. We're a little busy right now.
Yes.
Our office is a little busy at the moment, but after the election, we're going to sit down with Troy and plot out a podcast series.
Well, that's
Because
great.
our office, we are the official historians of the county, you know, so I feel like we do have a responsibility to provide that type of information.
Yes, I think it would be wonderful. When I was growing up, all the books, there were no books by Chicanas, Mexican Americans. They were cookbooks. They were by women who wrote a cookbook or a little family memoir. They're pen and ink drawings. Your little sobrino would do the artwork, and you get somebody to do it hand printed or self-published. And so when Bless Mi Ultima came out 50 years ago, I remember it was like, I cannot believe it. There's a Chicano out there. He's handsome. I'm going to meet this man. And little did I know that Rodolfo would become my mentor, my professor. I received the first Hispano scholarship, creative writing at UNM. I got a master's in 1 year that Rudy gave me that scholarship. And I got walking pneumonia too. I was living in Santa Fe. I got a lot of parking tickets, but I got a master's in 1 year. And then later on, one of my professors, who was an Irish actor, Hugh, he nominated me, and I have an honorary doctorate from UNM in the arts. And it was this professor, Hugh Whittemire, who when I first walked into in my first paper, he threw the paper on the table with all of our papers. Horrible. He'd spend his whole weekend checking our footnotes. I had never written a research paper, even though I went to Madonna High School. I was footnote clueless. And so he had checked all the footnotes, was disgusted. I got a D on that paper. And you know what he wrote on that paper? Appalling scholarship. That was my first paper with Dr. Whittemire. And then later on, he was the one that nominated me for the honorary doctorate at UNM.
You know what I always say when those types of things happen? Even though they're criticizing you, it's because they still care. If he wasn't going to give you all that criticism, he probably didn't care, but because he was
cared.
criticizing you, he cared
Yes.
still.
Well, and the only way I elevated my grade was because he was an actor. I didn't know it at the time, and I did a reading from Riders to the Sea, that incredible one-act play. All the woman's children have died by the sea, and the last one has disappeared. There were fishermen there in the Aran Islands, and
I've been there.
well,
Yeah.
have you read Riders to the Sea?
I have not.
You have to.
I have to read
And
it.
so she, the matriarch, her last son's body has washed up. And she says, now I shall rest.
Oh,
Because they've all died by the sea. And so I read this piece, and I got a good grade with Dr. Whittemire because I did what I could do. And also in a class with Herschel Zone, it was a Shakespeare performance acting scene class. Well, I wasn't prepared at all. I was not. I hadn't memorized my piece, so I did an impromptu performance of something else. It was kind of like I don't know. I did my own scene, created my own scene, and it's in a Shakespeare class. And Herschel's Zone was up there, and I came up and I did this jujitsu kind of informal thing that I created on the spot. And what do you do when you don't have what you're supposed to do? Well, you do something that's going to rock them and really shoot it out there. So I did this performance piece, and ditto for Dr. Wittermeyer. I was doing badly in that class, so I had to pull it out. You have to pull it out, and that's the training that theater will give you. Yeah. I was recently on a Zoom, and I couldn't hear them, and it was like, begin. So I'm with the Laredo Public Library. Thank you very much. It was a wonderful event, but imagine being on a Zoom. I can't hear them, and I'm in the chat. Start now. It's like, start now. I'm my own director. Start now. I had no idea that they were in the Laredo Public Library with a ballet folklorica. They had my picture up there and everything. So I interviewed myself. It's like, I'm not going to curse, but it was like, oh, my God. I don't know what they're saying. I can't hear them, and I have to perform for however long I can. And I'll do my best. And I kind of like interviewed myself on a Zoom. But see, that's the kind of training that theater gives you. You're ready for anything. Ready for anything. One time when I was teaching my theater class at U of H, and I'm leading some exercises, and we always did some warm-ups, and I'm wearing a skirt. I don't know why that day, and I had a slip on in the days that I wore slips, so I'm trying to lead these physical exercises. The slip was giving me a bloody time, so we were in a circle doing our warm-ups and everything. I just took that slip down and threw it across the room, and all my students cheered, because that's what you do. You take the slip off, and you go on.
Mm-hmm.
Bravo.
Man, bravo, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so I think we can sit here and talk the rest of the day.
Yes, we can.
But I think we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. We might come back, Denise, if you'll have
I'd
us.
love to.
Of course,
Yeah.
I would. Well, when you read the article,
Yes.
as we can always invite Harry Sanchez over when he comes in, or I would meet Harry at the Sunshine. Mm-hmm. Talk to him over there. Go to the park and sit in the park with the Sanchez people. We'll get a hold of the Grimes.
Yeah.
Get a hold of Carol Medina, Mr. Medina's daughter. She lives in Tucson. She wrote a wonderful cookbook, and get a hold of his son, and then you can interview them about her father, because he never got his due.
Yeah. We'll hand him
Robert
his
C.
flowers.
Medina.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think we talked about so much in this episode. We'll do some more episodes, I'm sure. Another shameless plug for everyone to come to Casa Camino Real bookstore. And I just want to say thank you to Bern, to Jacob, who brought the whole setup here today, who helped us out, to the little kitten who's been hanging out with us all day, Mia the kitten.
My little resident baby.
Yes, little Mia. Thank you, Cynthia, for setting this up. And of course, thank you,
Thank you so
Denise, for
much.
having us.
Well, it's been a lot of fun. We could stay here all day. We should go to lunch and come back. There's more Café de Olla. It's always ready. And we'll be here for Dia de Muertos. We'll have an altar for Rodolfo Anaya. I haven't figured out if it's going to be here. Well, it'll be, the whole store will be an altar. I'll bring in memorabilia. I even have, Rudy used to travel in the Mexico on the beach towns, and he would send me seashells and poems. And I also ran across a paper in which he was figuring out a title of one of his books and crossed it out,
love.
and then came up. So, this is going to be Rudy Central for Dia de Muertos.
Love it. All right, folks. Well, I think that's it. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media accounts. You can get this podcast wherever you can find podcasts. And we will see you next time.